I'm good at one thing, and that's paving roads, said the old steamroller resolutely. The mare was soaked from head to toe. The fire hydrant spewed water 200 feet in the air. He took off his hat and rang it out, but it did little good. It was like standing directly under a rain cloud. But surely steering is a basic skill that any respectable vehicle should have. George just grunted. Like I said, boss, paving roads. Only thing I'm good at. George's driver rubbed his neck anxiously. He had already apologized profusely to the mare. He had tried to pull George away from the hydrant, but it had been no use. George was a hard machine to control. It took another hour to close the hydrant up. The mare was furious. Water was already scarce in Ballyhoo before they drained half the reservoir into the streets. The townsfolk would have angry words for him, and even harsher ballots later that year. He made sure to thank the fire truck before he went. You got here faster than usual, smiled the mayor, and there wasn't even a fire. Did you take a shortcut? No, sir. Not sure what changed. Just the traffic, I guess. George rolled his eyes. As the mayor departed, the fire truck glared at him. You're a real piece of work. You know that steamroller? She snapped, her engine flaring a little as she did. Yep, George replied, plainly. That's it? That's all you have to say? What else do you want? An apology? Ain't gonna bring your hydrant back. Unbelievable, blared the fire truck. The men hopped aboard, and she left in a huff. George watched her go, half amused. Huh, she didn't even notice. They rarely do, agreed George's driver. When everything is as it should be, nobody pays any mind. But I know how hard you work, George, don't worry. Who's worrying? And he spat a glob of black tar down a gutter drain. Not me. I don't do it for the accolades. And he petered away down Ballyhoo Main Street. It was perfectly smooth. That very morning, the blacktop had looked like the surface of the moon. Now, every car that rode atop it practically glided. No more swerving around potholes, no more flat tires. All of Ballyhoo was now a little bit faster. But none of the cars realized, of course. All they could do was honk and swear, stuck behind the slow steamroller on his way out of town. George didn't mind being unappreciated, but he hated loud noises. Cut it out! He growled to the mob behind him. Get off the road! Hollered the blue convertible behind him. You're causing a jam! The honking intensified. That was the last straw. George had had it. I'll show you a jam. He slammed on the brakes and went into reverse. Oh my God, cried the convertible. George slammed into his hood and began to roll his hood flat. The 20-some cars packed behind him panicked, swerving into reverse at odd angles, veering over sidewalks and into parked cars. A fruit lorry turned over and spilled peaches all over the intersection. Cackled George as his driver heaved on the regulator. It was jammed hard in the wrong direction. What cheapskate pays for your maintenance? Cried the owner of the convertible as she bailed out of her car. You get what you pay for, lady, replied George. I'm publicly owned. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, a different sort of meltdown was happening. The Brendam nuclear plant had been established for 5 years now, and it had been a true economic boon to the whole Brendam Peninsula. The construction, and then the operation, of the plant employed hundreds of people, and the clean energy it provided was enough to power half the island all on its own. Now, it was on the verge of destruction. Conventional power plants have one large core where the reactions occur. The Brendam plant, however, was an innovation from the top scientists of Crovan's Gate Works. This revolutionary new design utilized 6 smaller cores, which were all water-cooled and heavily insulated. It had worked like a dream, until it hadn't. Somewhere along the chain of command, a plant worker had slipped up. Now, one of the cores had gone critical. Gordon rushed into Tidmouth Station with a special express. A multitude of important people shuffled off the train and into the fat controller's office. Henry stood nearby, looking pale. Both engines watched as the last gentleman closed the office door behind him.
"So much for your clean energy, Henry," scoffed Gordon. "It's sure to make a mess of the whole island now."
Henry scowled. He had always believed in renewable energy. When the power plant was built, he delivered the materials, equipment, and even the nuclear cores himself. It had kept him busy for a year.
"At least I tried to make a difference. If we don't do something, global warming will put the whole island under water." "Perhaps. Or maybe your pet project will put us under water this very evening."
Henry gulped and desperately hoped it wouldn't. The office was packed to the walls with scientists, engineers, and politicians, and one rather wide controller.
"Apologies, ladies and gentlemen," said Topham sympathetically. "I'm not used to entertaining this many."
"I knew a nuke plant on Sodor was a bad idea," said the Minister of State darkly.
"I remember you being quite fond of it when I proposed it," said the fat controller calmly. "Fond enough to send 20 of your own men to lead it."
The minister was quick to change the subject. "Dr. Quincy," he said, "how can we contain this quickly?" "Well, the scientist was rapidly cleaning his spectacles, well past the point of sparkling. He didn't do well with social interaction, tight spaces, or crowds, let alone all three at once. What we should be worried about right now is a chain reaction." "Agreed," said a silver-haired female scientist beside him. "We must separate Core 5 from the others for cooling."
"I see," nodded Topham. "Tell me, Dr. Klebwit, how easy is that to do?"
"Thankfully, we designed the cores to be removable for regular servicing," she continued. "But it's very hot right now and very unstable. Cooling System 5 has been disabled, so we need to get the core out of the complex and into the open." "Absurd! It'll poison the whole town!" cried the Minister of State.
"It's sealed and heavily insulated," explained a hunched engineer. "It is hot, but it won't radiate anything or anyone." "Unless it erupts."
Topham gestured seriously with his pen. "Unless it erupts," agreed the lead scientist, "which is why it's paramount that we have a level surface upon which to roll it out."
"That, may be a problem,"
explained the plant manager, who was looking very disheveled.
"The rails into the plant are on a very slight incline, and the roads are, gravel."
Several scientists face-palmed. The rather nervous one burst into fearful tears.
"I see. So you need a smooth road,"
pondered Sir Topham Hatt. "Not just smooth," stressed the silver-headed scientist. "Immaculate." The fat controller rubbed his chin. Then he stood sharply and threw on his jacket.
"I know just the machine for the job."